When you sign up for a new PCP, and sometimes these things have pretty fancy names like Select, New Horizons, Deep Beginnings, or Help, I'm massively overcommitted. When you sign up, you should have visibility of what's called, or what is known as, a balloon payment, also sometimes called a GFV, Guaranteed Future Value, and that is what that vehicle will be worth, there or thereabouts, at the end of the agreement. That balloon payment, that GFV, doesn't change. That is what is outstanding on the finance agreement, and for you to own the car, you would need to clear that. If you do so, the car would then be transferred into your ownership, and you own the car and you're good to do whatever you please with it. Now, the ideal situation from a finance company perspective is when you hit the end of that agreement, when you're paying that final payment, that car should be worth in the market a little over what the GFV is. A little bit of equity in the car, right? So the car is worth more than the balloon payment. That's the kind of ideal situation. If there is a huge discrepancy, i.e. the balloon payment or GFV is way under what the car is worth, then the finance isn't going to look very attractive. The monthlies aren't going to look very attractive. So you want to kind of balance the monthly payments, what you're paying through finance, to where that GFV is at the end. So you have this kind of nice marriage and expectancy at the end. Now, all of the previous PCPs that I have been in, when I've gotten to an end, I have indeed been in that situation, and in some cases very favourable from an equity perspective, indeed so much so I've ended up buying the car and flipping it on and pocketing the difference. Now, what can you do if the car is worth a little bit more? Well, you can be brave and you can buy the car and flip it, or you can potentially use that equity back into the dealer to get yourself into something new, to contribute to a deposit for you. So there is some flexibility in terms of what you can do with that equity. And of course, it's a good position to be in, right, where the finance is nicely aligned with that GFV and everybody is pretty much happy. No surprises, if you like, from a finance house perspective, and from you, the consumer, everything looking rosy. But what if there is a significant mismatch? Now, let's take an example. Let's say you get to the end of an agreement and your car is worth 60 grand and that GFV is 55. You've got 55 left to pay. That's kind of the perfect scenario. Let's say your car is worth 60 grand and the GFV is £94,000. That is a difference of about £34,000. And we're not talking positive equity here, we're talking negative equity. That is the real world situation that I will be in with this car. A significant difference in the GFV and what this car is absolutely worth. And why is that? Well, because it's a Taycan, and we know these cars have had a real tough time. Luckily, from my perspective as a consumer, I'm covered, I'm protected by this. The PCP gives you that guaranteed future value of the vehicle and the option to return the vehicle, which is, given the situation, the only realistic option that I have with this, and I'm sure many other Taycan owners who are in a similar situation, it is the only option that they are presented with as well. Of course, there is no way I'd be paying that GFV of £94,000 to then flog the vehicle for £60,000 and realise a significant loss. But what options do you have at the end of a GFV? I have a letter from Porsche outlining those options. 4 options that I am presented with at the end of the GFV, and the first of which is, would you like to get into something new? And you could potentially use the equity in the vehicle to do that. However, in this situation there is no equity, so to get into something new would effectively be a cessation of this agreement and jumping into something new by means of probably quite a significant deposit, right? That is just the reality of the situation that we're in with this car. The second option that you're presented with is, would you like to refinance the GFV, which apparently a lot of customers do, and I'll get onto that in a minute, because not necessarily in this situation, but that is one of the options. Number 3 is, would you like to keep the vehicle? Would you like to own it? And to do so, I'd be paying that £94,000 GFV. Or would you like to return the car? Now, I really want to explore option 2 here in this video, because this kind of left me a little bit dumbfounded that I was actually presented with option 2, and it was actively pushed onto me, or promoted if you like, by the Porsche guys at my local OPC. Surprisingly so, and of course that is this outstanding balloon payment that I have, and of course the option of refinancing that. If you found this useful, please do kindly consider a sub, massively appreciated, and don't forget, when we hit 10k subs we will be donating £1,000 to a charity. That's alright, isn't it? There are 2 approaches that you often see here, 2 specific approaches that you can take, and the first of which is, if the GFV and what the car is worth kind of marry up, some finance companies will just let you continue paying the same monthlies that you were on, so you can continue to roll on the agreement, and they might do that for another year or 2 years because it's working favourably. You're of course paying off the depreciation, they're getting money, they're making margin, you've got the car, everyone's happy. The second option there is that you actually refinance that whole GFV, so that whole £94,000 is refinanced. And this is what really struck me, because this is what was offered to me, and I guess in a way kind of assumes that we must be completely blind or oblivious to what is going on in the market with Taycans at the moment and the position that they're in. So let's just say I was to refinance £94,000, I would effectively be paying £94,000 for a car that is worth about 60-ish. Which sounds like madness, because it is madness. You couldn't ever imagine going to a used car dealer, looking at a car that is worth £50,000 and saying, do you know what, take £95,000 for it, take 100 grand for it, it's absolutely fine. It just wouldn't happen. So by refinancing that £94,000, I would be doing the crazy, almost unthinkable thing whereby I crystallize that significant delta between what the car is worth and the GFV. A huge delta. I'd be crystallizing a massive loss, signing on the dotted line and putting the loss into my name. And this is what really surprised me. This is what really kind of blew my mind, that it was presented as an option. And I absolutely can understand why they're looking to do this, because they know it's lost money. They just want the car off their books. Even better still, if they can get the entire financial commitment, or as much of it back as possible, into VWFS's coffers, so much the better. But it absolutely is madness. It would be madness to do so in this situation. I guess they have to try it on, see what sticks, and maybe sometimes they get lucky. But I will be absolutely returning this car at the end of the agreement. Now, what happens from a returns perspective? Well, as we know and we've heard, dealers, Porsche dealers specifically, really do not like the idea of getting on board with more Taycans. They do not like you handing your car back to them for them to have to resell, and the reason is because there's so many of them out there at the moment at the dealers, and they want a shot of them, and understandably so. So this car won't be going back to OPC at all. Going through the collection process, I was advised that it would be Mannheim. If you know, Mannheim are a car auction company alongside BCA, so this car is going to be going straight out to auction. It won't even be going back onto the OPC books, back out to auction and resold on the used market, which is the only viable option. I was genuinely a little bit shocked really to see that they offered me that option to refinance that debt, because you'd have to be coming up the River Thames on a banana skin to think that it would make any viable sense whatsoever, a viable option. It just absolutely is not. But got to admire them for at least trying, right? So yes, this car will absolutely be handed back at the end of this agreement, and it is a kind of bittersweet situation, because it is a good car on the whole. I have enjoyed it. not the best car, but it's time for a change. It's time for something new, right? That's it for this one. Do stay safe, stay well. See you on the next one, and bye for now.